Welcome to today's talk session. My name is Deidre Moss, and I'm the host of Can We Talk? I'm an educator, motivator, and a talk connoisseur. In our session today, we will take a drive through Bahamian history as we consider Black History Month, as this is the month of February. So we are still in what some people call the month of love, but we want to focus on February being Black History Month. So today I am excited to welcome my guest, Vera Chase. So I will pass the virtual mic to her for her to introduce herself.
Hello, Miss Deidre. How are you today? Thank you so
Great.
much for inviting me to this special occasion. Drive through Bahamian history. I'd like to just mention a few things today that might excite some persons and probably educate some persons and entertain some persons. The Bahamas is very much a part of Black History Month, and Deidre and I will tell you why, beginning in a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. You want to tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you are related to researching Bahamian history? I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on that.
I will. My name is Vera Jane. I was born Vera Jane Poitier. I'm a Chase now. I am a writer, published author, a storyteller, researcher of Bahamian history, and the president of the Commonwealth Writers of the Bahamas. We have children writers in our group from Abaco down to Mayaguana. And I'm so very proud to be the president of this organization. I fell in love with Bahamian history after I retired from the Royal Bank of Canada. I had no idea who I was or how I got to the Bahamas, or I knew nothing about Bahamian history because I was taught by the nuns from the Sisters of Charity from Mount St. Vincent, New York, and they were Americans. So I don't think they knew too much about Bahamian history at that time. So we were taught Indian history and British history, but not very much Bahamian history. So when I retired, I went back into the past to find out who I was, how I got here, and some more information about the Bahama Islands. So I took about 20 years. I did the research. I'm still researching. For about the last 20 years, I've been researching every other day or every week. And every day I find something new about Bahamian history that the persons around the world know nothing about.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chase. I want to welcome. Hi, Bradley. Welcome. Where are you watching us from? Welcome. I think you're from Fall River, Massachusetts. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but just glad to have you in. Please like, share, and also you may, you can add to this comment under the video. I will definitely come in and check the video, but I want to thank you for joining us today. Hi, Bradley, again. So we want to talk about Bahamian American connection. I know you mentioned that a little bit, and I just, for those who may not be, not familiar about it, I just want you to, confirm, does a strong connection exist between the Bahamas and the U.S., particularly as it pertains to Bahamian roots and the contributions in American society?
Well, I heard that you're speaking to someone from Massachusetts. And Massachusetts and New England is directly connected to the island of Eleuthera. Because in 1647, when the early settlers came in from Bermuda to Eleuthera, they ran into some difficulties with food. And Captain William Sale, who brought the early settlers from Bermuda to the Bahamas, got in a boat and he went into Massachusetts to get food from the persons up there. And they gave him enough food to last for a little while. That's in Massachusetts now. Massachusetts, they sailed from Eleuthera to Massachusetts to get food for the settlers on Eleuthera. But that's not the very beginning of the connection between the Bahamas and the southern colonies. The connection began with the southern colonies in 1783, when after the American War for Independence, the men and women who were loyalists to King George III were banished to Canada and the Caribbean, and in particular the Bahamas. And the loyalists who came in from the southern colonies of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida, and those other southern colonies. They were banished to the Bahamas, were given property in the Bahamas by King George III, and they brought their slaves with them when they came in from these colonies. So in the Bahamas, you'll find well-known names that came out of the southern colonies like Petty, Hebron, Campbell, Cunningham, names like that. You'll find them very prevalent in these islands. And that is why Bahamians like to travel to the United States very often, because they know that their relatives of many, many years ago still reside in those colonies.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that insight, and what you would have shared. And so we want to talk about some of those connections today. We want to highlight some of those connections today, as we consider Black History Month. And so you feel free to jump in at any time.
I will.
So, so firstly, we want to talk about James Weldon Johnson. He was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and he is of Bahamian descent. So he would have wrote what some persons call the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And his father was James Johnson, and his grandfather was Stephen Dillett. So if you're in the Bahamas, you know that there is a school named after Stephen Dillett. So definitely Stephen Dillett would have made some significant contributions in the Bahamas. He does have a school named after him. And as it pertains to James Weldon Johnson, he was a leader in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. And so that is our first connection that we want to talk about, and his contributions as it pertains to civil rights and fighting for the rights of Black persons in the civil rights movement, and his contribution, his literary work, his poem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was music was added to the poem by his brother. And so you have that Black national anthem. And so you want to add to that, Ms. Chase?
Well, of course, I'd like to add to that, because a lot of persons are not aware that Stephen Dillett was the first Black person elected in the Bahamas in 1834, I think he was. What happened is, in his early years, he and his mother had taken Stephen Dillett and his brother from Haiti, where they had an abusive father there. And she caught a ride on a boat and came to the Bahamas. One son came with Stephen Dillett, but the other son, no one knew what happened to him. He probably went into the United States. But Stephen Dillett was a prominent person in the Bahamas in 1834. I think he was the Postmaster General. He was the organist at Christ Church Cathedral. He was everything, but he was a mulatto. He was not a Black person. He was a person of color. And very prominent. He lived on Market Street. The house that's right opposite the Central Bank of the Bahamas. He was a man of means.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight, Ms. Chase. So another person that we want to highlight is W.E.B. Du Bois. And they would have also contributed to the civil rights movement. And he was a descendant of Bahamian slaves. And so he also made notable contributions as it pertains to his literary work that he would have contributed. He wrote a book, and those were significant contributions. So I don't know if you would like to add to that aspect.
Well, W.E.B. Du Bois is a man that I've in my research. I came across his name. I believe his great grandfather was born in Fortune Island, which is called Long Key now, and his father was white and his mother was a slave woman. I came across a lot of Americans are not aware of that Fortune Island, which is now called Long Key, is where W.B. Du Bois, I think his grandfather, great grandfather, was born in the Bahamas, and I believe he's buried in Ghana, but I'm not aware that a lot of Americans know this about the Du Bois family. I'm not aware of that, but they should know that was his origin. Another
Thank
famous,
you.
another
So
famous name added to our list in the Bahamas.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. So he would have made significant contributions, and as you would have mentioned, thank you for adding in your aspect. You spoke about Fortune Allen. His
Yes,
grandfather, Father Alexander Du Bois, was born on Long Key.
Fortune Island, which is now called Long Key, and it's in the
Yes,
constituency called Michael, which is Mayagona, Inagua, Crooked Island, Auckland, and Long Key. It's called Michael district in the Bahamas.
awesome, awesome, awesome. And he helped to establish. He was one of the founders of the National Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP,
Of
and his
course,
literature that he produced included The Souls of Black Folk and Black Reconstruction in America. So he made some notable contributions. And
yes, he did.
so, another person I wanted to mention was M. Adderley Range. Now, Nee Wilkinson. Okay, that was her maiden name. So she would have made significant contributions. She was the first Black woman to serve as the head of states, as the head of a state agency, in Florida. And her grandparents were of Bahamian descent. And so we can trace, there are some persons who would have made significant contributions as it pertains to civil rights movement, and even the pioneer, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have had connections in Bimini.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah,
Very much so. I'm hoping that one day the bust that they have of him, because he was so famous, he did so much for the world, that would be a full-fledged statue and not just a bust. The persons in Atlanta, Georgia, they traveled when they installed the bus in Bimini. They traveled by the bus loads from Atlanta down to the Florida. They caught the ferry and went over the installation in Bimini. That's just how important he was in our history.
definitely. And there is a museum. I'm not sure if it's still standing, the state of the museum, but I know there was a museum in Alice Town, Bimini, with artifacts, some artifacts
Right.
from,
Yeah.
yeah. So
He's revered
he,
and really honored there in Bimini. Very
but
much
he had a
so.
personal assistant. He had a personal assistant, Mr. Saunders, in
Yes.
Bimini,
Yes, he did. He
and
did.
so that, so there is that.
I'm trying to figure whether Mr. Sanders is still alive because he always spoke so warmly about Dr. Martin Luther King.
I think his brother may still be alive, and he may be doing some tours.
Yes.
Okay,
We
so
do have, we do have some significant connections between the Bahamas. Let me go back a little bit in the past years, about, let's say, because I go back into the past, like 1647, 1648, the Bahamas, North Carolina, and South Carolina were sister cities in 1648. We were sister cities. Persons would go back and forth between the Bahamas and North Carolina and South Carolina all the time. That is why we have a similar cuisine, with similar food and similar accent, and we were one people.
So I wonder, is some of the history maybe lost?
The history of, yes, it's been lost because we're not concentrating on history anymore. We're concentrating on modern things like tourism and job creation and other things, but history is not being documented, nor it doesn't seem like there's a lot of persons really care about history anymore.
Yeah, and I think this is important even for the younger ones to really know about this history, as you would have mentioned, that connection with South
Exactly.
Carolina, the Gullah Geechees, right?
Exactly, man. And the
Uh-huh.
persons on Cat Island speaks almost exactly like the Gullah Geechees.
So it is definitely important.
The accent is almost the same.
Definitely, definitely. And I want to mention someone with your surname, your maiden
Oh,
surname. Sidney Poitier, who would have
Yes,
made significant contributions as it pertains to, how Blacks were viewed. He made significant
yes, he
contributions
did.
in
Well,
acting.
yeah, I knew him very well. He was my grandfather's nephew.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
he was my grandfather's nephew. And in his book, you'll find David Poitier's mentioned in a couple of the pages in his book, in his first book. David
Awesome,
Poitier
awesome.
was my grandfather.
So he was a native of Cat Island. Of course, he would have recently passed, but he was a celebrated actor and he earned numerous awards and accolades to be from, such a small country. He made history as the first Black actor to win an Academy Award for Best Actor in 1964. And he also made notable contributions as well.
Yes, and he never lost the common touch. He always spoke about his homeland, where he was born, his people. He always mentioned us, always mentioned us. And even though a lot of persons are thinking that he didn't do enough for the country, he was a quiet person and did not say all the grants and stuff he gave to students to go to school and things like that. He didn't want that to be mentioned, so it was never mentioned, but he did.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So there are numerous other Bahamians. We can trace the roots back to those persons who would have contributed to those movements and who would
Yeah,
have made
there's a
significant.
book. There's a book called Race Relations in the Bahamas, 1784 to 1834, by Whittington B. Johnson, whose mother or father was from Ragged Island. It'll be a good book for persons to buy online from Amazon. It has all the information in it about relationships in the Bahamas from 1784, which means it would be in the time when the Loyalists arrived to emancipation. Everything is in there. If you want to know about the Bahamas, it's in that book. Also, History of the Bahamas.
Thank you. Could you repeat the book again, please?
There's two books that everyone should have in their house that if they want to know more about the Bahamas. And there's one called Race Relations in the Bahamas, 1784 to 1834, by Whittington B. Johnson. Whittington B. Johnson, and that's been sold. That could be found and maybe at Amazon, and if they still have it. And there's another book called History of the Bahamas by Michael Creighton. Everyone who's interested in Bahamian history or world history should have a copy of Michael Creighton's book, History of the Bahamas. It goes from the Arawak Indians straight on down to the connections with the United States and with England and other countries. Everything is in that book that's contained in that book. Connections to the Bahamas is in that book by Michael B. Creighton. You wouldn't need to know anything. You wouldn't need to ask any questions because everything you would need to know, all the names of the governors, all the names of the pirates of Nassau, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, everybody's in that book.
Blackbeard.
Blackbeard the pirate is in that book, and all the governors, Governor Haynes Oval, Governor Rawson Square, all the Gregory Town in Lutheran, Governor Gregory, all those names in that book.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And why do you think, as we wind down this session, why do you think it's so important for us to highlight those contributions?
And I don't want to be negative, but I think we need to do a better job in really documenting our history so the world would know, not only the Bahamians, the world would know that we're not just sun, and seafood tourists. The world would know that we're here for everybody. We're here for black, white, whoever you are. If you're interested, if you can't get to go to Africa, by the way, if you can't travel to Africa for a visit on a safari, then you come to the Bahamas and you visit the islands where plantations and wild horses and birds and donkeys and everything, the blue holes and ponds and everything is here. Everything. Everything is here right close to the United States. It's a short flight, maybe an hour from New York to Nassau or into the Family Islands or the Family Island of your choice, and just come and explore.
Definitely. And we spoke about that. And I wanted to mention, you talk about those trips that are made to different countries and, to explore Black history. But we have remains right here, right
We do,
right here,
we
those
do.
plantations. I think
Yes,
there's still there's one that's standing. Maybe it was restored, but I believe there's one still
there's a lot
standing.
of them still standing. But for example, right on downtown Nassau, Black Bear's Well, it's in full view where the pirates of Nassau used to get their water. In full view on the sidewalk. You can look at it on the sidewalk. And then there's a cave in West Bay Street where Black Bear and the Arawak Indians used to live in the caves. Those caves are still standing. They're still standing. Every island have plantations. Even New Providence have plantations. And they have the William Wiley Estate in Western New Providence that is still open to tourists. You can explore the plantation. You can go on a moat, or you can walk around the plantation in Western New Providence.
Definitely. And we also have our the lighthouses. I just
We have
spoke
the
to a gentleman who was
lighthouses.
a lighthouse keeper, and he talked about, how he had to, keep the lighthouse going every 2 hours. He have to crank it up. We have all these
But we
historical
have
sites.
we have more than 30 lighthouses across the Bahamas. We have 12 lights in New Providence on the island of New Providence alone. We have the one on Hog Island, which is now the Paradise Island Lighthouse. That construction began 1816, and that was constructed by slaves. That was opened on September 1st, 1817. That's when that opened, and it's still there. It's the oldest in the Caribbean. We have the
Wow.
oldest library in the Caribbean. Nassau Public Library is the oldest one in the Caribbean.
Is that the
Over
one that was used to be the prison, right?
exactly. That's the one that used to be a prison.
And when I went there, I thought it was so, it was so interesting being in there with the bars on the wall and being in
Exactly.
something that used to be a prison. And it was a really awesome experience when I went there, out of
Well,
as a high school student, and getting to experience that
well, they
environment, seeing the
said
bars on the cell.
if you want to go in a ghost and want to go see environment on the third floor, the doors are slamming up there all the time.
Oh, so it's like it's a haunted house type of
Yeah,
situation.
on the very third floor, they say on the very third
It's
floor. But
amazing.
it is the oldest library in the Caribbean, which it needs to be
Wow.
preserved because the gentleman who built that library also built St. Matthew's Church on East Shirley Street. He was the architect for the church.
Wow. Bradley Missick is asking, where do you find wild horses in the Bahamas?
Well, something, I'll be honest with you, on Eleuthera in the Roxanne area, they had a farm in that area, and the farm closed down, and everything went their merry way, including the horses. And sometimes in the earlier years, they had to be careful when the plane comes in that the horses are not galloping across the runway.
Oh wow.
That's
What
in
about
that's in Roxanne, Eleuthera.
wow. Wow. And what about the swimming pigs? We also have those pigs
Yeah, the
that love
swimming
the
pigs,
beach.
and I'm in my book. I'm writing about the swimming pigs because if persons know where those pigs come from, they really will understand. I found the origin of the swimming pigs, and the person who owned them many hundreds of years ago treated them like children. They were his pets. They were like his children. They were living in houses. The original owners. So if you take a pig,
Hold on, let's go back. Hold on, let's go back. So we had the pigs living in the houses.
they had the no, the pigs had their own houses, and not
Wow.
pens, not pens. They
Wow.
were living, these gentlemen used to visit the pigs 6 o'clock every morning, make sure they had their breakfast, which means that if you take a yard pig or a pig from the pen in another island, throw that pig overboard, that pig won't swim as well as its own pigs because they're pedigree pigs. And I'm not telling anyone where they came from, but I know exactly where they came from.
Wow. Wow.
So
So
they said some island people are using the pigs in different islands. They started up as swimming pigs, but I can tell them right now if they're listening, those pigs not gonna be the same pigs as the summer pigs. Summer pigs was the person was that gentleman's children.
wow. So the whole point of the matter is, if you want to see some historical sites, you don't really have to travel too far. I mean, because we're
No, you
right here.
don't. We right here, and we have the blue holes. We
And the
have
66 steps.
the 66 steps, and then don't forget now we have the Brigadier General Robert Cunningham Lake, which is 1 mile long near the airport. And then we also have a 1 mile long lake down in Agua, where all the birds and flamingos and all those different things and wild donkeys and everything in that area. If you're a nature person, then in Agua is your island. Go straight there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And so, while we acknowledge those individuals with Bahamian roots who would have contributed to the civil rights movement, and we reflect on Black History Month, there are also notable persons in the Caribbean as well who would have made their contributions to the movement, the civil rights movement, and the fight for
Yes,
social for justice here.
I think the Caribbean they were like the underground railway, where slaves could escape, get to the docks and escape into these islands, and no one will find them because when they got to the Bahamas from the colonies, they'd find their friends already here. And no, you couldn't come out of the United States and find the slaves that they living on Aucklands. If they escaped to the island of Aucklands, who's going to look for them down there? No, they use these islands to escape from the United States, from the colonies. We are big, and in the Underground Railroad, they need to put the Bahamas on there and a big sign because we are part, or we were part of the Underground Railroad. And in
Awesome.
fact, I have a list of 100 pages. I have a list of 100 pages of persons in the early 18th, in the 1793, 1788, who, and from the United States or the colonies, whose slaves ran away, and they said that they were headed for the Bahamas. I have a listing of them. I have 100 pages, the names of persons who owned slaves who were looking for them in the States. And don't, they said, if you find them, we'll pay you £1 or whatever, or take them to the nearest police station or whatever. But I do have a list of, it's really interesting because when they were looking for their slaves, they put where they look like they have, if they were bow-legged, or they were knock knee, or they wore a calico jacket, or
Oh,
because
wow.
they had African scars on their faces. This list described the slaves to the T. They're
Wow.
looking for them, and when they escaped, they was wearing a calico jacket, maybe the high top hat, and some shoes, and they described black shoes. They described them to the T. So the persons who find them in Nassau will let them know, take them to the nearest station and report it, and report the persons who harbored them also. The list is something I should publish that list as well because the ancestors, how they describe them, sometimes will make you weep.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It is definitely is a
And
sobering.
they came out of, when they came out of when they got in the Underground Railroad and came to the Bahamas. Oh shoots.
That's okay. Just touch your camera. Yeah. Okay. You good. You good.
Okay. Okay. I think, to be honest with you, I think we and the Bahamas played a more significant role in the Underground Railroad than Canada or some of the other Caribbean countries because we were closer to get into
Yeah.
Canada. You have to go and cross land, and but to come into the Bahamas, you just need to get into a boat and just come straight on down. And the slavery in the Bahamas was bad, but it's not as bad as it was in the U.S. because the British government had everything under control. They controlled the listing of the slaves. Each slave master in 1821 had to make a listing of all their slaves with what color they were, where they were born, how old they were. And on the list, if they said they were an A is next to their name, that means they were born in Africa. If a C is next to the name, then that means they're Creole, they're born in the Caribbean or some other country. But the ones that came directly from Africa, they have to list them directly on their slave list, where they were from. And I think a lot of persons not aware of that. And the National Archives of the Bahamas have all this information. We have more records than only country that has more records on slavery than the Bahamas is St. Croix. St. Croix in the Caribbean, their slave records, there are persons who are in their country today could go to their records and find exactly where they came from. And in the Bahamas, it's almost the same. We have good records on slavery. There's nothing missing. Can you hear me? Deidre? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Awesome,
We have
awesome.
good.
So you said
Yeah.
the only Caribbean country that has more extensive record is St. Croix.
Yeah, St. Croix. The Bahamas have extensive records on slavery. It's at the National Archives of the Bahamas. You can find records there. You could also find like records on land grants here in the Bahamas. You can find out if your ancestors had land granted and whatever. We also have records on the bills of the loyalists and which slave got whatever, with all that stuff. But Dennis rolled his records, everything is clearly documented. Records are really
Awesome.
clear. The only one thing we need to be able to be able to look and how to access is, but the records are here on slavery.
And you also talk about the difference in the slave trade in the Bahamas, with it being more or less lenient, more lax, with the British government having more control in terms of, over the slaves.
Yes, they did. The slavery in Bahamas was different from slavery in the United States because the British government had more control and the British government had more countries. So they 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 start planning the abolition of slavery from about 1807. They start thinking about it, not working on it. But it was the slavery it's a slave revolt in Exuma that caused them to speed it up in the Bahamas. When Pompey the slave and start to revolt and do the peaceful revolt in
Yes,
Exuma.
I was wondering when you was going to mention Pompey. Bradley Missick is saying you're intelligent, Miss Chase. He loves it. He loves it. He loves your storytelling.
Yeah, I can go on for another couple of weeks telling them the story of the Bahamas and the United States.
I was wondering when you were going to mention Pompey and Exuma
Then I must tell the person
his rebellious nature.
when I want to tell you about Pompey because Pompey is a slave that's close to my heart. And he's the greatest Bahamian in the 19th century. He was only 33 years old when he decided to take. He was not the he was not the overseer, but he made himself the leader of the slaves in Exuma. And slaves believed what he said. And if Pompey tell them not to go, they wouldn't go anywhere. They won't go to the fields. If Pompey tell them to come, they'll come, but nobody else could tell them anything but Pompey. Pompey was 33 years old. He used to run 26 miles every week from every week he go and visit the slave plantations. There was 5 or 6 in his zone that belonged to Lord John Roll. He
But
used to
didn't he
visit,
teach himself to read?
he teach himself, but Lord John Roll is insisted that the slaves on his plantation know how to read and write. Because
Oh, wow.
yeah, he was, that's why I'm telling them that black people were not always the what you call them. They were not always persons who did everything for black people. But on
So the
Lord John
slave owner wanted his slaves to
to
know how to
know how to
read?
read and
Oh,
write.
wow.
He insisted that they know, and he insisted that the ones who knew how to read and write teach the others.
Oh, wow.
So on
Oh,
Exuma,
wow.
they knew how to read and write. And Pompey used to write letters to England all the time, you know. He wasn't playing with them.
Wow.
He used to write letters to England all the time, telling them what was going on in the plantations. He was
So the
32 years
slave
old.
used to
A
write
slave,
and
a
report.
slave, a
Wow.
slave was in control of more than 1,000 slaves on Exuma.
Wow.
And
And
they
he used to
started a
send his
quiet
reports
revolt.
in.
Yeah, that's why the Commonwealth Rights of Bahamas were trying to get his film made that
Yes,
would
yes,
showcase him.
yes.
He need to be showcased. In fact, they need to have a statue, a football statue of him on Exuma and one in Nassau. He was awesome. I read everything about him. Everything about him.
But he would
He
have made
was,
significant, he would have made a contribution because we had the Pompeii Museum downtown.
yeah, but no one don't really know what all he did.
Yeah.
They don't know that the slaves would meet that he would meet with them when he used to run 26 miles from Rollville. You go to Rollville and next would be Steventon, then Ramsey, then Mount Thompson, then Roll Town, straight down the beach. Because it was a corpus, like woods was he couldn't run through the bushes, he ran along the beach to visit the plantations. He'd meet with them on the plantations. And
Awesome.
that's one slave who was not only a slave, I don't know what you call him, he could be the member of parliament for Exuma
Wow.
in 1830.
Wow. So you mentioned that you want to get this film off the ground because you want to bring an awareness of who this individual was and his contributions and what he did and how he worked with the slaves in Exuma. You want to talk a little bit about that as we wind down and bring this session to a close?
Pompey, well, in Nassau, well, there's nothing really. There used to be a statue of him in Exuma, but that didn't wasn't worth. It wasn't really the person that I read about. It was a golden statue with golden boots on his feet, but I think in 1829 there were no boots for slaves. So I told them that was not a good statue. So my group, we are the Commonwealth Writers of the Bahamas. We've been working on this from 2016 to really get a six-part film series on the life of Pompey and the slaves and what happened in England, what happened in the Bahamas, sorry, in the Bahamas in 1829, 1830. It was at that time that Governor James Carmichael Smith came into the colony as governor, and no one knew he was an abolitionist. No one knew he was an abolitionist when he came into the colony and he began to make changes.
Wow.
He began to make
So
be
he was
sure that
working. He was
women
working.
slaves were not flogged. He did everything, and the
Wow.
Congress tried to run him. And guess who signed his petition when they wanted to send him back to England?
Ooh.
Stephen Delat told them. Stephen Delat wrote a letter to
Wow.
England telling them not to send Sir James back. Stephen Delat
Wow.
did that. Mhm.
So they brought him in to manage the slaves. Mr. Carmichael, James Carmichael, Sir James
No, James
Carmichael.
Carmichael Smith was governor. They did not know he was an abolitionist.
And they did not know he was an abolitionist.
No, they
And
didn't
he,
know. They
wow,
didn't know. I didn't know. But
wow,
Pompey had an idea because Pompey was trying to meet with him when they left Exuma. Did a quiet revolt trying to get into Nassau to meet with Sir James about their situation on Exuma. He was trying to get into Nassau. It's called a quiet revolt. He had 77 persons, and with them, with the slaves in Exuma, they all live in a marital home, a family home. So when they came into Nassau, 77 persons came in Nassau. They brought all the children with them. Everybody, who came in to see the James came in and brought every child with them, the babies, the breasts, and all. Everybody came. Everybody was on the boat. They took the James, they took the slave master's boat, and everybody got on the boat with their food and everything, and they tried to get
wow.
in Nassau to meet Sir James.
So everybody was on the boat.
77 people was on the boat.
Wow.
Because
So I,
the slaves were saying they're not going to leave their children behind.
mm, wow. So it was a little bit different. It was a little bit more lax, more lenient, and on the side as it pertains to slavery.
Yeah, it was not so bad here. There's only two acts of cruelty I read about in my research over the past 20 years. Two or three. There's
Okay.
three. And they only one person's each.
Okay. All right. Well, Ms. Chase, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know you're busy and you stay researching. You're always researching history. I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing with us today. And anything else you would like to add? You want to talk about the work that you're doing, your initiatives as it pertains to, trying to get your film together for Pompeii Road, sorry.
We're trying to get it's a six series, 6 episode film on it's called Pompeii of Steventon. We have a GoFundMe set up at a live. I'll send it to you. Maybe you can send it around for us, please.
Thank you. And that is with the Commonwealth Writers of the Bahamas.
Commonwealth Writers of the Bahamas, and the film is called Pompeii of Steventon. I'll post it on Facebook and LinkedIn. The website for the GoFundMe. Anyone who wants to be a part of it, we'll write them into the script. If they give us a contribution, whatever big or small, we'll write them into the script.
Thank you so much. So we are closing out the month of February, and we wanted to recognize Black History Month. We also wanted to recognize those individuals who may have lived in America, who would have had some Bahamian roots, understand that such a tiny nation, such a small nation, has made its mark in the world as it pertains to the advancement of civil rights for persons of color. And so we wanted to highlight and mention those persons who would have made those contributions. So I would like to thank you, Ms. Chase, for sharing the information, sharing your knowledge, sharing your insights.
And Bahamian history is my first name. I can go on for days.
I know that's your passion.
My passion.
I know it's your passion.
One day we'll get the whole Bahamas to come together and realize that each island has its own history and need to be
definitely. As we think about the island of Bimini, being someplace that would have been a retreat, being a place where Dr. Martin Luther King would have written his speech.
Well, I can tell you one thing about the island of Bimini that nobody knows. I'll let you go right now. But when Christopher Columbus came, took the Indians back to Spain to meet with Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, he took Bimini. He took Indians from Bimini.
Wow.
And those were the ones who told the king and queen that in Bimini, they asked them how come their hair was so black and their sign language and the skin was so smooth. And they said that there's a spring in Bimini.
Yes, the Fountain of Youth.
That they swim in every day. That's what they told the king and queen. And that's how come Ponce de Leon.
Ponce de Leon came searching for the Fountain of Youth.
Yeah, and it's still in Bimini.
Awesome.
They have a long history.
Yes. Anyway, so much so. Definitely. So much so, Dr. Martin Luther King, in Bimini, there's a bus there.
Yeah, there's a bus. Yeah, there's a bus of the Martin Luther King. In the marshes, he used to walk among the marshes, which is like the low
in the mangroves. Yes.
The mangroves, yeah. To walk among them, to find such delight to do that. So why don't some person just come right now and go there and just relax? It's only 30 miles or 50 miles from Miami. You can get on a ferry
very
boat.
Close. Very close.
A ferry boat and get from Miami or from Florida to Bimini.
It's very close. So I want to thank you. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
No. It's a pleasure being able to explain and explore and tell persons about things that they don't really know, and help them to appreciate the Bahamas, because we appreciate them so much as well. We even being on this program today,
definitely.
I do appreciate it so much. And thank you, Ms. Deidre. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you, and we understand. We appreciate you. We understand that.
The
We
famous
appreciate
Moss
you. We
last name.
understand that. Moss?
Yes. In Christchurch Cathedral, there's a plaque in Christchurch Cathedral. You got to look for it. Christchurch Cathedral downtown. There's a big plaque near the gate where the priest comes out, and it has James Moss on it. That's your man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. That have its own history, and isn't it interesting that even the surnames would have come from some of the loyalists, and they have history attached to them as well.
Yeah. What happened? The names like Moss, Petty, Campbell, Hepburn, who else? Eve. Names like that are definitely American loyalists' name. Christie, they're the American loyalists. All I know the Albrys and the others, they came out of England. But the Poitier last name, I researched that from in its entirety. It took me 10 years to really get down to the root of it because my cousin had written the wrong information
Wow.
in his book. Only to find that Colonel Charles Poitier came to the Bahamas in 1807 as the collector of customs. And he brought his slaves with him, and he came and he's buried in the Western Cemetery. In the Western Cemetery, and in downtown Nassau, and he's in a crypt like he just was like got buried yesterday, because he was a man of means. And in his crypt is his 9-year-old son Christopher, buried right next to him, and his father-in-law Joseph Hunter is also in that crypt. And they're the Hunters of Hunters, Grand Bahama, same people.
Wow. Wow. There's so much history.
I
Thank
think
you.
I should. I
Thank
think I
you.
should stop right there.
I want to thank you, Ms. Chase, for sharing with us today. Your knowledge is always welcome, and we understand that as a people, you won't know where you're headed unless you know where you came from, and it's so important to understand our roots, our ancestry, where did we come from, understanding the contributions that were made in advancement for persons of color, and the contributions made by those individuals. So we want to highlight those, even some who are not even recognized. We want to highlight those and recognize and grateful for the contributions of those persons. They're not always talked about, but we want to highlight those and thank those persons as well. And so with that, we've come to the end of our session. Unless you have any additional comments, Ms. Chase?
No, we'll probably do it another time. We touch on some other
Awesome.
things another time.
Definitely, because there's so much to unpack. It's
so
a lot
much
of information.
to really unpack. But next time we can do it island for island. We'll start off.
We didn't even touch the contract. Those Bahamians who would have gone on the contract.
Oh, that's another thing again that we are connected, because a lot of Bahamians did not come back when they went on the contract in 1943. A lot of Bahamian men and women, and we had about 5,000 to 8,000 Bahamians who went on the contract, men and women. Cat Island had the most women that went on the contract. And they were on the contract because the Americans had gone off to war and left the fields unattended. And the then president, together with the governor here, they put together a package whereby Bahamians could come and work the fields in place of the Americans who had gone off to war. But nothing ever happened for them, the Americans. The Bahamians, no one ever mentions them. They never got no money or none like that, no pension or nothing like that. Because we didn't follow up on it.
Definitely.
No, we follow up on it.
Definitely. So I want to thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chase, for our talk today. We're definitely going to continue that. And so with that, we've come to the end of our session. I want you can comment under our page. Oh, Mr. Missick from Massachusetts, he's saying he loves your storytelling, Ms. Chase. Thank you so much, Mr. Missick, for joining us today. We appreciate your viewership.
Mr. Missick's island is Eleuthera.
Okay, Mr. Missick from Massachusetts may have some Bahamian roots, right?
Yes, he's I'm giving him the island of Eleuthera.
You need to check Eleuthera, Mr. Missick. Check your background.
Check your background. So definitely. You take good care. Deidre, it's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure speaking with you too. So with that, we've come to the end of our session. Like, share, comment under this video. Let us know your thoughts. And so with that, we've come to the end. And can we talk?